Today, we will talk about the true origin of cryptocurrencies, a story that many people consider merely a coincidence of the digital age or a technological miracle born line by line from code, but which in reality has roots stretching back to the earliest periods of human civilization. Let us admit that when cryptocurrencies first entered our lives at the beginning of the 21st century, we all viewed them as a technological miracle or a rebellion against the old financial system. To many of us, it seemed as if Bitcoin and those that followed appeared overnight, without any roots at all, consisting solely of lines of code and complex equations. But in reality, history never works that way. No major financial system or revolutionary idea is born in a vacuum. Cryptocurrencies are not a simple coincidence of the digital world. They are, in fact, the most modern chapter of a very ancient story about humanity's long-standing desire for trust, power, control, and anonymity in economic exchange. To fully understand this digital world, we must not rely solely on computer science. We must look back at the long history of money. There, we will see that anonymity was not an exception for money, but once a norm accepted by everyone. It is interesting that for a very large part of human history, money had no connection to our identity. Imagine merchants in ancient Mesopotamia passing silver pieces to one another. No registry recorded their names. Or in ancient Rome, when a citizen made a payment with a denarius, the coin did not ask, "Who are you? Where do you come from?" Or, "How did you earn this wealth?" Money was simply a tool. Whoever held it was its owner. This was not a system flaw. On the contrary, it was the very essence of money. Coins were valued not according to who used them, but according to the value of the metal they contained and the authority stamped upon them. In other words, anonymity was placed at the very center of the system. That is precisely why trade developed freely, without requiring permission, disclosure of personal information, or external control. In the past, everything was different. Paper money, which was once anonymous like coins, came under state control and became centralized as modern states formed. Banks also ceased to be merely private intermediaries and turned into the main pillars of national economic policy. Governments directly linked our identities to finance, citing reasons such as stability, security, and efficiency. This process accelerated rapidly, especially in the 20th century. World wars required the complete mobilization of economies, causing tax systems to expand and financial oversight to become a normal part of daily life. As the century drew to a close, most money was no longer the cash in our pockets, but records and databases managed by banks and governments. Now, every step we take and every transaction we make leaves a trace, and every account must have an owner. Money has truly become transparent, but the tragic reality is that this transparency was not created for us. It was created only for those who hold power and authority. When computers began entering financial systems in the 1970s and 1980s, cryptographers and computer scientists started asking questions that made us think deeply and sometimes even frightened us. They were not asking merely out of academic curiosity, but because they were genuinely concerned. Would we be able to protect our personal privacy in the digital world? Perhaps the most intriguing question was whether money could exist without any central control. These people believed that perhaps the traditional trust between humans could be replaced by something more precise: mathematics. Looking back at the late 20th century, we see that the creators of the cypherpunk movement were by no means ordinary criminals or anarchists in the conventional sense. In reality, they were programmers, mathematicians, and philosophers who sincerely believed that privacy is one of the most fundamental human rights. They felt deeply that as communication moved into the digital world, surveillance would become inevitable unless resistance was embedded directly into the system itself. For them, cryptography, encryption, was not merely a technical tool, but also a form of political expression. In a world becoming increasingly transparent and constantly monitored, They were trying to create small, secure private spaces of their own through encryption. In fact, decades before Bitcoin, people had already made interesting attempts to create anonymous electronic money. The digital currency experiments of that era sought to transfer the familiar qualities of physical cash, privacy, fungibility, and independence from any central authority, into the digital world. As noted in sources, most of these systems were not wrong in concept. They failed at one point. They still required trusted intermediaries, such as banks or certain companies. Unfortunately, as long as those old structures remained in place, the systems could not fully succeed, because as long as a single entity existed at the center, preserving true anonymity was almost impossible. The financial crisis of 2008 became the final drop that turned everything upside down. The illusion of stability we had believed in for years collapsed under the weight of excessive risks taken by global banks. The hardest part was that while governments rescued those massive institutions deemed too big to fail, ordinary people were left to struggle alone with unemployment, inflation, and harsh austerity measures, paying the price for these mistakes with their own lives. At that moment, the pillars of trust in financial institutions began to collapse in our hearts. For many of us, this event revealed a bitter truth. Modern money has never been neutral. It is inherently political. We realize that this system serves the interests of large institutions first, before individuals, before us. Bitcoin was born out of an atmosphere of great disappointment. The inclusion of the famous headline about bank bailouts in its first block was by no means a coincidence. It was an open protest slogan against the centralized financial system. Do not think of Bitcoin merely as a new payment method. It is, in fact, the encoded form of centuries of monetary evolution. Imagine this. Like ancient money, it belongs directly to its holder. Like cash, it asks no questions about identity. And like gold, it is limited in supply. Yet what sets it apart from everything before it is that it operates without any central system. We are no longer forced to trust specific people or institutions. All trust rests entirely on transparent and decentralized protocols. At the center of everything lies a very important idea: a return to anonymity. Cryptocurrencies reminded us of something we had forgotten. They did not create financial privacy from scratch. They simply brought it back to life. These technologies shook the long-standing belief that money must always be monitored and centrally controlled. As a result, a very important conversation that had long been left aside was reopened. We must now truly consider: should our economic actions be monitored at every moment, or should personal privacy be accepted as a natural rule? Most importantly, do we need permission from someone to use money, or should it remain a neutral and free tool for all of us? Cryptocurrencies are less a grand revolution and more a familiar echo coming from distant history. They remind us of a forgotten truth, that money was once a completely personal matter, and that trust was created directly between people, not imposed from above through large institutions. This topic calls on us to ask ourselves slightly uncomfortable but extremely important questions. Who does this financial system truly belong to, and whose interests does it really serve? Whether cryptocurrencies will fully live up to their original promises remains to be seen, but their historical weight today is already clear to everyone. They are the greatest symbol of our desire to regain independence in the economic world, to create small spaces of freedom within strict systems of control, and to restore anonymity not as a flaw, but as a sacred principle. In fact, the story of cryptocurrencies is far deeper than we think. It is not merely about technology, but about memory. We often forget this, but anonymity is not a rule that came later to the financial world. It is its foundation. It has always been this way. Great powers have always wanted to see everything and keep every step under control. Yet there will always be people who resist this, who try to return money to its original and pure form. They want money to be a loyal tool that serves only us, individuals, that does not ask our name and does not question us. This is not merely a search for innovation. It is a form of resistance for our freedom. Thank you for watching us. If this topic was interesting to you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications. In the upcoming videos on this channel, we will take a deeper look at history, economics, and the major processes shaping the world. Your opinions are important to us as well. Share your thoughts in the comments. Remember, those who understand the past build the future more correctly.